Brook's flashback has finally ended, and now it's time to review everything that happened from start to finish. So in today's video, we're going to review Brook's complete flashback from the very beginning in chapter 1183 all the way to the latest chapter 1186. At this point in the story, the Straw Hats are dealing with the chaos unfolding in elbaf. Gunko is no longer acting like the same holy knight they fought earlier, leaving everyone confused about what they should do next. So, let's start from the very beginning, where Jinbe was already asking Brook whether they should kill or save Gunko. This was honestly a very heavy moment because it forced Brook to choose between protecting everyone or saving someone from his past. When Brook heard this, he started remembering the past. Brook had a flashback 70 years ago. The location was the fallen kingdom of Asperia. The word fallen itself already sounds suspicious because many kingdoms connected to the Void Century ended up erased or destroyed. So there's a possibility that Asperia also became one of the forgotten kingdoms erased from history. At the start of this flashback, we saw young Brook singing. The title of the song was Good Morning Mermaid. Brook was singing to their entire kingdom until the sun rose. We were shown a very beautiful panel where Brook could be seen happily singing in front of the rising sun. Oda intentionally focusing on the rising sun again may not be random because the dawn symbolism continues appearing throughout the story, until someone called Brook captain. It turns out that Brook was actually the leader of the royal army of the Asperia kingdom. Everyone admired Brook's singing. And yes, Brook's appearance was finally revealed. This was the first time we saw the teenage version of Brook. Along with this revelation was the young princess, Princess Shuri, also known as Gunko. They were 20 and 7 years old during this time. Just like everyone else, Princess Shuri was also impressed by Brook's singing. Until Shuri brought up her mother, who we later learned was Queen Candle. Actually, Brook had a crush on her based on his reaction. When Shuri noticed this, she mentioned that it was dangerous to fall in love with someone who already had a husband. But Brook replied that love is free. This interaction honestly felt very classic Brook even before he became a skeleton. Then Shuri's father suddenly interrupted them, King Roan. According to him, adultery would result in the death penalty. So Brook's relationship with their king was somewhat comedic. Until Shuri suggested that Brook should stop pursuing her mother. Instead, Shuri herself would marry Brook once she grew up. When King Roan heard this, he was completely shocked. Brook meanwhile, disliked the idea, until a soldier suddenly arrived. He reported that a gang was trying to enter their port. According to him, the guards there were outnumbered, so there was a possibility the gang could enter the kingdom. The king asked what the gang's target was, but the soldier answered that their target was Queen Candle. In the next panel, King Roan was shown panicking over his wife's safety. Gunko was also worried, while Brook seemed already used to this kind of situation. This may imply that Queen Candle was already famous for constantly becoming the target of enemies. When the scene shifted to the gang, we saw them already attacking the town of Asperia. Until they finally reached the opera house where their target, Queen Candle, was located. The gang surrounded the entire opera house. Going back to Brook and King Roan, Brook was calming their king and said that Queen Candle was far too strong for them to worry about her. Meaning, most likely, the gang would fail in whatever they were planning. Besides, before Brook even came there, he had already encountered the gang and defeated many of them. Meaning only about half of their group remained. That's why Queen Candle could easily handle them. This alone already shows how insanely strong Brook was even in his younger days, and here, the Queen of the Asperia Kingdom was finally revealed. The reason Brook said Queen Candle was strong was because she was actually the former captain of the royal army whom Brook replaced. Queen Candle's stance was very similar to that of a real soldier. Honestly, her design and aura almost feel like a legendary warrior from the Void Century era. And considering how important Asperia suddenly became in this chapter, there's a possibility that Queen Candle herself knew secrets connected to the ancient world, and that is where chapter 1183 ends. But Brook's flashback is only getting started. So now, let's move on to chapter 1184. So chapter 1184 started by showing the teenage version of Princess Shuri. She was already said to be 14 years old at this time. When the neighboring countries heard how beautiful Princess Shuri was, it was said that many tried to marry her. But based on the appearance of Princess Shuri, it looks like she doesn't like this idea at all. Every royalty that tries to marry her gets beaten up by her. Shuri revealed that she has no interest in weak men or even men who have no skills related to music. This also connects well to the culture of Asperia Kingdom since music seems to be treated as something extremely important in their kingdom. Almost like a symbol of status and identity. Until suddenly, we saw Brook arrive. Based on Shuri's reaction, it seems that her admiration for Brook still remained. Still, even though she's already 14 years old, it looks like she still has a crush on him. Until Brook suddenly cut her off and told her to stop her improper behavior. And when Brook saw beautiful women passing by, he immediately mentioned his famous quote. When Shuri heard this, she immediately threw a sword at Brook. In the next panel, the two of them suddenly had a moment together. It was shown that they were happily singing together. Until Shuri mentioned how much she loves Brook's songs, Brook then said that the king also told him that. And here, Shuri asked why Brook was so close to her father and mother. Brook said that everything he has now is because of the king or Princess Shuri's father. If it weren't for her father, then he would probably just be a corpse by now. This line alone already hints how tragic Brook's childhood really was compared to the cheerful personality he has today. And here, a flashback suddenly happened. At this time, Brook was only 11 years old. It was shown that he was dirty and watching children practicing how to play the piano and violin. Later on, Brook suddenly started running. One of the guards was already chasing him. The guard said that the children were scared because of Brook's appearance. In the next panel, we saw where Brook lived. He was living in a dump site. He dreamed that one day he would also be able to play real instruments. He also mentioned that his parents and siblings were almost dying from hunger. Brook blamed all the bad things happening to him on the current king. That's why Brook wished that their king would someday be replaced. What's interesting here is that young Brook already had hatred toward the kingdom's ruler before eventually meeting the very people who would completely change his life. After a while, we then saw a slightly younger Luffy. He heard Brook singing, so he approached him. He was amazed at Brook because of how resourceful he was for making a violin using only bottles and wires. This scene proves that Brook's musical genius existed even without proper training or equipment. Brook remembered that he had seen Luffy before. That's why Brook suspected that Luffy was his fan. Luffy didn't deny it and said maybe that was true. Luffy also refused to let Brook call him old man since he was currently only 21 years old. When Brook heard this, he didn't believe it because Luffy's face looked like he had already gone through a lot of hardships, and because of this, Brook just decided to call Luffy Big Brother instead. And this is where their friendship began. Later on, Brook cooked Luffy his favorite frog curry. Brook said that the secret ingredient was curry powder. He said that he got it from the Marines' ship whenever they visited Asperia Kingdom. Luffy then said that it's not a secret anymore since he already knows the ingredient now. Until Luffy suddenly remembered his luxurious lifestyle because of being a prince. What he was eating now was very far from what he usually ate in the castle. Then Luffy suddenly remembered how a princess was introduced to him before. It was very obvious on Luffy's face that he was nervous before eating Brook's cooking. And although he was hesitant about eating the frog, he still swallowed the whole frog completely. Brook noticed that Luffy almost looked like he was about to cry while eating. Brook thought that Luffy was tearing up because he liked the food too much. But it's also possible that Luffy was emotional because this was probably his first time experiencing such a simple but genuine moment outside royal life. Until it was shown that in the following days, the friendship between the two continued. In the next panel, from the port of Asperia Kingdom, we saw a Marines ship docked because they were importing musical instruments made in Asperia Kingdom. This further confirms the theory that Asperia Kingdom may actually be one of the most musically advanced kingdoms in the One Piece world. We also saw Brook's face badly beaten up. The Marines were accusing him of being a smuggler. They said Brook was part of a gang that was supposedly transporting illegal powder. But Brook denied it and said he was alone. He said he knew nothing about illegal powder. The only powder he knew was curry powder. And because of this, the leader of the Marines decided to kill Brook since he had already seen their faces. But before Brook could be shot, we then saw Luffy arrive. When Brook saw him, he was extremely thankful. When the Marines saw Luffy, they addressed him as Prince Luffy. When Brook heard this, he suddenly became confused. Luffy then immediately hugged the weakened Brook, so at this time, Luffy was actually with his royal guards. That's why the royal guards pulled Luffy back for his safety and said that they would handle everything. But Luffy was eager to get revenge on the Marines who tortured Brook. So he said not to stop him because he wanted to personally finish off the Marines himself. When the Marines realized that everything Brook said was true and that he had nothing to do with the gangs, they suddenly became nervous. Nervous for their lives. And here, Luffy and Candle attacked the Marines. When Brook saw Candle for the first time, he was amazed. It was shown that aside from Brook, apparently all the women in Asperia Kingdom were also extremely amazed by Candle. Some fans are already theorizing that Candle might have been an extremely influential figure in the kingdom because of how much admiration people had for her. Meanwhile, inside the castle, it was shown that Brook was already awake. He was inside the room together with Luffy and Candle. Candle mentioned that she wasn't angry at Luffy's decision to attack the Marines, but she hoped that next time he would think carefully about his actions first. Luffy clarified to Brook that it was never his intention to deceive him by hiding the truth that he was a prince. He said that he was happy accompanying Brook and didn't want that to change just because he was a prince. Brook was also told not to reveal to anyone that he was taking curry powder from the Marines. And here, Candle suddenly approached and held Brook. She mentioned that Southwest this was the place Luffy always went to whenever he disappeared. It was shown that Brook suddenly fell in love because of what Candle did. And honestly, this could explain why Brook eventually became someone deeply attached to beautiful women later in life since Candle may have been his very first love. A little later, Luffy revealed that Brook was his favorite musician. He said that Brook had a special talent. This moment is actually huge because this was basically the turning point that completely changed Brook's destiny. That's why he immediately ordered that Brook be given proper equipment and be sent to music school. He wanted Brook to become his personal musician. When Brook heard this, we saw tears fall from his eyes. He cried because finally, his dream was going to come true. And this also makes Brook's future tragedy with the Rumbar pirates even sadder because after finally achieving happiness, he would eventually lose everything again, and this is where chapter 1184 ends. But the most emotional part of Brook's past is still ahead. So, let's continue with chapter 1185. Chapter 1185 begins exactly where the previous chapter ended, with Brook officially entering the castle of the Asperia Kingdom. Right from the start, Oda shows us how important this moment was for Brook's life. Before this, Brook was simply an orphan wandering without purpose, but this castle would eventually become the place he called home. It seems that Reuven entrusted the young Brook to Candle, who personally taught him proper etiquette. We then see Brook being amazed by the beauty of the castle. Even the women were beautiful according to him. What's funny is that despite all these years, Brook's personality really hasn't changed at all. Candle quickly reminds him that he is her apprentice and should act properly. However, Brook immediately asks his iconic question once again, proving that some habits never die. Later, we see Brook and Candle at school. Candle asks him why he refuses to wear a uniform. Brook answers that he can't compose beautiful songs while wearing one. While it sounds like a joke, this moment actually reveals how free-spirited Brook has always been. Even as a child, he hated restrictions and preferred expressing himself through music. In the next panels, many people are shown being jealous of Brook's position as Candle's apprentice. At the same time, we see Candle teaching him swordsmanship. What's interesting here is that Brook's current fencing style may have actually originated from these lessons. Oda could be showing us the roots of Brook's gentle blade techniques decades before he became a pirate. During training, Brook asks Candle if there is a man she likes. Candle admits there is one. However, the man occupies a very high position, making her believe that she could never be loved in return. According to her, the only way she can remain close to him is by becoming stronger with the sword. This allows her to stay beside him at all times. Brook then suggests that she dress more femininely so that the men might notice her feelings. But Candle rejects the idea. She explains that she doesn't need to be loved back. Simply remaining beside the person she admires is enough for her. Honestly, this line perfectly summarizes Candle's character. Unlike many people who seek recognition, Candle is satisfied simply protecting the person she loves. Then Brook suddenly realizes who the man is. According to him, it must be himself. And of course, Candle immediately gets angry once again. In the following scenes, Brook constantly follows Candle around. Eventually, when she can no longer tolerate his behavior, she smacks him on the head. At this point, Candle gives Brook one of the most important lessons of his life. She tells him that a person's strength is proportional to their manners and respect. What's fascinating is that even today, the older Brook still follows this lesson. Despite being a pirate, he remains one of the most polite Straw Hats. Returning to the timeline 63 years ago, Brook finishes his story by expressing his admiration for Queen Candle. The conversation then shifts to the arrival of the world government ships in Asperia Kingdom many years ago. According to Brook, the entire kingdom was consumed by fear, panic, and uncertainty. The people had never experienced anything so terrifying before. This detail alone tells us how feared the world government truly was even back then. In fact, the experience affected Queen Candle so deeply that she developed severe anxiety and became bedridden for several months. However, after this dark period came surprising news. Prince Reuven ascended to the throne and became the new king of Asperia Kingdom. At the same time, it was announced that Candle would marry Reuven and become queen. The kingdom's fear quickly transformed into celebration. And when Shuri was eventually born, the people's happiness only grew stronger. At this point, Brook begins singing and explains why he admires Reuven and Candle so much. They weren't simply rulers to him. They were the people who gave meaning to his life. That is why Brook states that he would willingly sacrifice his life for them. Suddenly, Shuri asks, "What about me? What if I face great danger someday?" Brook immediately answers that he would sacrifice himself for her as well. But Shuri quickly notices something. Brook's answer doesn't feel completely genuine. This scene may actually be one of Oda's biggest pieces of foreshadowing in the chapter. It's possible that Shuri already sensed that Brook viewed Reuven and Candle as his true family while still struggling to fully accept her in the same way. To lighten the mood, Brook pulls out a lollipop, instantly distracting Shuri. Later, we see the two training together and sharing countless wholesome moments. The relationship between Brook and Shuri feels almost identical to that of siblings. Brook protects her like a younger sister, while Shuri clearly trusts him more than almost anyone else. This is what makes the tragedy that follows even more painful. Because all happiness in One Piece eventually comes with a price. 1 year later, when Shuri reaches 15 years old, a mysterious toxic fog suddenly covers the kingdom. The people begin starving. Many become sick. The kingdom slowly starts collapsing. What's interesting is that Oda still hasn't explained where this toxic fog came from. Was it a natural disaster? Or could it have been something deliberately caused by the world government? At this point, both possibilities remain open. As usual, Brook continues singing despite everything happening around him. Unfortunately, Queen Candle's condition worsens because of the poisonous fog, and she eventually passes away. Her death devastates the entire kingdom. Brook, Shuri, and King Reuven are completely heartbroken. And this is where Esperia's downfall truly begins. Without enough resources, the kingdom can no longer pay the celestial tribute. As One Piece fans know, failing to pay the heavenly tribute almost always ends in disaster. The world government rarely shows mercy. Later, Brook notices how much Shuri has improved in combat. Shuri reveals that her motivation is her late mother. She wants to become as strong and respected as Queen Candle. The conversation then shifts to Brook's dream of becoming a pirate. Brook admits that becoming a pirate is still his dream. However, before chasing that dream, he wants to repay the kindness King Reuven showed him. This once again highlights Brook's loyalty. Even before joining the Rumbar Pirates, loyalty was already one of his defining traits. The story then shifts toward King Reuven. We see that he has become weak and ill. According to him, their true enemy is the world government. Since Esperia can no longer pay the celestial tribute, the world government offers an alternative. The people can become slaves in Mary Geos. Naturally, Reuven refuses. He would rather fight than allow his people to lose their freedom. What's especially interesting is that Reuven's ideology mirrors many of the heroic kings we've seen throughout One Piece history. His belief in freedom feels very similar to the ideals carried by characters connected to the ancient kingdom. Reuven predicts that the world government will arrive in 2 months, so everyone begins preparing for war. To raise the people's spirits, Brook performs songs for them. However, what nobody realizes is that the world government has no intention of waiting. They arrive much earlier than expected. And then everything falls apart. The kingdom is engulfed in flames. Battles erupt everywhere. An all-out war begins. Brook fights desperately but ultimately fails. When he finally reaches the castle, he discovers the body of King Reuven. The man who changed his life is dead. But then comes the chapter's biggest shock. The one responsible appears to be Princess Shuri herself. Brook is completely frozen. Unable to move. Unable to process what he is seeing. Behind Shuri stands a gigantic man affiliated with the world government. And honestly, this is where the biggest theory of the chapter begins. Based on Reuven and Shuri's appearances, it looks like they may have been affected by the mysterious Domi reverse. If that's true, then Shuri may not have willingly killed her father at all. Instead, she could have been manipulated, controlled, or transformed against her will. This would explain why Oda spent so much time showing the loving relationship between Brook and Shuri earlier in the flashback. In the final panel, Shuri declares that the war is over. Then she asks Brook a chilling question: "Are you happy with what you've witnessed?" And with that shocking cliffhanger, chapter 1185 comes to an end. Now it's time for chapter 1186, the final chapter of Brook's flashback, where Oda brings this heartbreaking backstory to its emotional conclusion. So, the chapter opens with the continued arrival of marine warships and world government forces descending upon the Esperia kingdom. The king and his people are putting up a fierce resistance. But it is clear from the start that this is a losing battle. This mirrors how the world government has historically crushed any nation that refuses to pay the celestial tribute. A recurring theme in One Piece where smaller kingdoms are systematically broken down under the weight of absolute power. We have seen this pattern before with O'Hara, Fishman Island, and the Lulusia Kingdom. From here the chapter shifts its focus to Brook. And this is where the emotional core of the chapter truly begins. If you recall from last chapter, Brook witnessed firsthand how Shuri killed his own father, King Reuven. Now we get the full weight of that scene. Brook desperately runs to Reuven's fallen body. He calls for a doctor. He is still clinging to the hope that Reuven could survive. He tries to wake him up. And as reality sets in, tears fall from Brook's eyes as he recalls everything he and Reuven shared together. This is significant because Brook, as a former member of the Rumbar Pirates, already experienced the devastating loss of his entire crew centuries ago. The fact that Oda is putting Brook through this level of grief again shows just how deeply personal this arc is for him. Brook is not just a comic relief character. He is one of the most emotionally complex members of the Straw Hats. Just as Brook is processing Reuven's death, Imu-sama is shown observing the scene. Then Shuri speaks directly to Brook. He delivers a cold and calculated statement. That the Shuri Brook once knew is already dead. Rather than lashing out in blind rage, Brook confronts Shuri with conviction. He reminds Shuri that he practically raised him. He insists there is no way Shuri could have killed his own father. This reflects Brook's unwavering belief in the bonds they shared. Then Shuri drops the bombshell. He asks Brook if he knew that Shuri was a celestial dragon. He then reveals that Reuven was never his true father. Brook cannot believe it. And honestly, neither can the audience. But here is where the lore gets deep. It is revealed that King Reuven had been withholding the celestial tribute. And the price was not 1,000 slaves as is typical. The world government wanted Shuri himself returned to them. Rather than surrender Shuri, Reuven chose to sacrifice his own people. He prioritized himself over his entire kingdom. This recontextualizes Reuven's character entirely. He was not the noble king Brook believed him to be. This is another example of Oda's masterful storytelling. flipping the image of a character at the last moment to reveal uncomfortable truths. Similar to how he handled St. Figureland Garling and other authority figures throughout the series, Shuri's anger is rooted in 16 wasted years. He grew up living as a commoner when he was supposedly born into the highest class in the world. Whether or not celestial dragon status is truly something to desire is debatable, considering what we know about Mary Geos and Imusama's regime. But from Shuri's distorted perspective, his entire identity was stolen from him, and now the mysterious figure who appeared last chapter is finally identified. Manmire Garo. The moment Brook looks into Garo's eyes, he immediately notices the resemblance to Shuri. Garo then confirms it. Shuri is his biological daughter. The key detail here is what Oda calls the binary eyes. These are described as an extraordinarily rare trait, a legendary gift said to originate from the people of the North Pole. This is a massive piece of new lore. The North Pole in One Piece has rarely been discussed, which suggests Oda is opening up an entirely new branch of the world's mythology. The binary eyes appear to have an awakening potential, and Imusama specifically desires these eyes, which raises enormous questions. Does Imusama want to use Shuri's eyes as a weapon? Or are these eyes connected to something even deeper? Perhaps the Void Century, the ancient weapons, or the secrets of the Will of D. Garo notes that Shuri has not yet awakened these eyes, but the potential is extremely high. This sets Shuri up as a wild card moving forward. Someone who could become either a powerful ally or a devastating enemy depending on who controls that power. Imusama, growing impatient with the explanation, cuts Garo off and simply invites Shuri to leave, which is honestly more terrifying than anything else. Brook remains in denial even after hearing all of this. He cannot reconcile the Shuri he raised with the cold figure standing before him now. When Shuri sees Brook crying, he dismisses it as pathetic. He states he wants people stronger than Brook around him. He declares that if going to marry Joa is what it takes to get that protection, he will do it willingly. This is heartbreaking on multiple levels. Shuri is not choosing evil out of pure malice. He is choosing survival and power in the only way he knows how, shaped by the trauma of discovering his true origins. Shuri then attacks Brook, and as the blade comes down, Brook's mind floods with memories of everything they shared together. Shuri, Reuven, and the life they built. It is a beautifully painful sequence. Brook's eyes open. He is surrounded by the royal guards of Asperia who are relieved and shocked that he survived. Remarkable considering a sword went clean through his skull. But then again, Brook literally has no organs. He is already dead. That is his devil fruit power working exactly as intended. The guards then deliver the devastating news. King Reuven is dead. The war is lost. And the world government has taken Shuri. At this moment everything clicks for Brook. It was not a dream. And here Oda gives us one of the most emotionally raw moments in recent One Piece chapters. Brook breaks down completely. The weight of losing Reuven and Shuri simultaneously. Brook's grief here is earned, not manufactured. Returning to the main timeline at Elbaf, Brook carries that emotional weight with him visibly. But something shifts. He begins to connect the dots. The devils he has witnessed here in Elbaf, their behavior and possession-like qualities, remind him of what happened to Shuri. He begins to believe that Shuri was not acting of his own free will, that Shuri may have been possessed. Similar to how Imusama and the Gorosei have been shown to manipulate and inhabit bodies throughout this arc, this is a well-founded theory. We have already seen Imusama demonstrate abilities that go far beyond normal human capacity. The idea that someone with rare awakening level eyes could be a target for possession or manipulation aligns perfectly with the established power system Oda has been building. Brook then does something that takes real courage. He asks the Straw Hat Pirates to trust him, and to help him save Shuri. The crew's reaction says everything about who they are. Nami, Usopp, Frankie, and Jinbe immediately agree. Nami even cries, because that is what the Straw Hats do. They do not abandon people, even those who have apparently turned against them. The plan is to free Shuri from the ice encasing his body. Overwhelmed with emotion and urgency, Brook runs toward Shuri's location without hesitation. Now the biggest question is, can Brook finally save Gunko, or will history repeat itself once again? We'll find out in the upcoming chapters. If you enjoyed this complete explanation of Brook's flashback, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next One Piece video. So that's all for today.